Welcome back, fellow armchair generals. This is Gamer 1745 here with my continued look at World Ablaze for Hearts of Iron 4 No Step Back. Let's see what Waldy is saying. Statistical process control was pioneered by Walter A. Shart at Bell Laboratories in the early 1920s. Edward Deming made it widely known. Okay. That is interesting. I would love a brief article on that if you like on Wikipedia or something. That would be something I'd want to read. Not a novel, but a thick book, but a brief one. That would be something I'd love to look into. And yes, as we were sort of talking about how there is too much limitations, in my opinion, and based on history, that for trading for Germany that just don't match. Let's do that. Oh, not 3, 2. Let's just do this. This just is not my understanding of the realities of the 1930s and trade, lack thereof. Okay, let's. Okay. You want to put some pressure on. The Sudete, or on Czechoslovakia to get to Sudetenland. Well, let's create another. We want to give this to, okay, Balkan. Oh, you're the same color as them now. Lovely. God, I hate their color selections. That would be good for Luftwaffe.
Bereit zum Ausrücken. 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 Achtung. Angetreten. Ausrücken. Ausrücken. Zuhören.
About forgetting to occupy all the hexes. Or not hexes, but provinces. So he's playing some other game. Very well. Taking the statistical process control to Japan. Yes, Japan definitely does. Japan, prior to World War II, is not rather effective in industrial capacity. It just isn't. It has a lot, but it's not effective. At least in my opinion. We're still in May 38. I don't know what I should be. Naval bomber, yeah, I like naval bomber. Doing this naval effort, but well, We'll get the army somewhat settled here. Not yet able to do heavy infantry battalions. I don't know what we need to research to do that. Enable that, yeah, maybe. Don't know. Work with the national focus, not sure. I haven't started to read it, but I got the audiobook of Toz's Wages of Destruction just recently. Wanna
Angetreten. Ihre Befehle.
that. I'm not that I'm going to do this right off, but I'm just looking at, okay, so we got people in all the right places. We just don't have a large enough army. Fine. Kept falling asleep. Okay. Well, I might. I don't know. I want to, like I say, I got the audio. I want to listen to it. You just have an Audible account, so might as well use up one of my credits for that book. Okay, guys, you are almost victorious there.
Befehle.
Spit. We'll go clean up the coast once we get this sort of double wide. And rails running through these places for supply. Okay, naval effort. Great. That's where I want to get. I'm just looking to see if there's other... Okay, we're definitely ignoring all of that over there. U-boat effort, right, yeah. Now let's do this. And we can produce more. We are getting some more. Let's do some. We are nearly full up on our fuel. So let's build some more silos. In and around Berlin. Silos. I've definitely come to study the industry of World War II. Because of the war games that I play, Hearts of Iron primarily, but I'm trying to understand the war more from that perspective than just from a battles and whatnot perspective. Fighting this alone, dude? I mean, none of you guys are coming in to help me out. Okay, well, we got Dora there. Oh, let's stop the attack. Okay, we got Dora researched. I don't know if that's even useful, worth it, whatever. Oh, we can do here. And now that we have Dora research, I think we're still, yeah, let's get a few of these factories once we get the up.
Beacon!
Close up some of these pockets. Hello, Eric. How you doing today? Okay. Here's the thing, and I've just been triggered, as you moderns put it. I've been triggered by something that Mamualdi said. I know France had a ton of war profiteering in World War I. I assume Britain did as well. Munitions manufacturers. Okay. Gamer is going to talk out of his ass here a bit because I don't have all the facts and figures to dispute this entirely, but I want to dispute this narrative. Good to hear you were better. Sorry I didn't add trigger warnings. Yeah, no. I can be triggered, but now I don't know if you guys know of what was originally a newspaper comic strip that became a play, that became multiple movies. It's called Annie. I don't know if you moderns know what that is, but it's about a little orphan girl. Well, one of the main characters and sort of father hero figure, his name is actually, in the whole thing, Daddy Warbucks. Warbucks. And this was made in the interwar period. And it comes out of the sort of, made all your money in the war. Evil guy who made money out of death and destruction. Blah, 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 blah. Yes, Daddy Warbucks. And actually, the name is like as if it was a normal name, Warbucks, but it's tied to this whole thing. Okay, I know from some of the stuff that I know about the U.S. in World War I, most of the companies making weapons for the United States military. Now, this is different than making weapons to sell them to, say, the French or the British. But making weapons for the Americans, generally speaking, made a very small profit margin on those weapons. And in fact, they might not have made, in significant cases, profit at all over all the cost of ramping up and getting production going, and all of the, it may cost, say, $10 to make a rifle, but when do you actually start making that, and you're selling it to the government for say $11 even. You're selling the government, it costs you $10 to make it. You're selling it to the government for $11. But the idea of ramping up, building a new building, ramping up production lines, getting all that going, takes years to amortize that cost to actually make profit. Now, maybe they made so many of the P-17 rifles or something in that short period of time that they made back their investment costs, but I'm not sure on this. And there's probably a more healthy profit margin when selling to nations that are at war and you're not, peacetime, before America gets involved in that. And I would suspect most of the French companies, not all, not everywhere, but most of the, I think that was originally America's idea. He made his money in the war comes from. Well, profiteering. Okay, well, and now, we'll get to some other stuff here. Along that line, yes. But in the arms production, I would suspect most of the manufacturers of weapons for France were operating on small profit margins. So they might make, in modern terms, lots of money. Well, I mean, just in any term, lots of money, but it's making it on a small profit margin, on 1%, on 5%. So yeah, somebody's getting rich, individuals are getting rich, companies are making a lot of money, but that I wouldn't call profiteering. Profiteering, and yes, Nate is sort of right in the Civil War. Profiteering is when somebody goes to war and they need something desperately, and you're selling it at an unusually high price, an abnormally high price. Now, in World War I, a lot of men from all the nations that participated in the war had to do one of two things. One, go into the military, could be the Navy, the Army or new Air Forces, but go into the military, lots of men. So they're no longer productive at all because they're defending your nation, so they're useful, but they're not productive. Or they've gone into the armaments, munitions, other war support, making uniforms or boots or whatever, gone into the industry that supports that war. So they are productive, but they're supporting the war effort, as well as lots of women in France, in Britain, in the United States go into war support industries, direct support industries. That there is a high demand for food in Europe, in France, and other places. There is also in Germany, but Germany doesn't have access to international markets. Well, the American farmer, and I also believe the Canadian and other farmers, but the American one I sort of know about, the American farmer has high demand for food products. So food prices, that he can sell his food for. I don't know if it's going up so much at the consumer level in America, but at the sort of wholesale level in America, goes up. So the American farmer, during World War I, this is before America gets involved in America gets involved into the war, joins the war, starts producing a lot more food. And the American farmer looks around and goes, well, if I buy this other land here that isn't being maybe used for food production, next to me, because to this day, there's lots of, people, if you talk about food shortages, there's no real food shortages in the world. There's just transportation difficulties to some regions, whether they are political, say, North Korea not allowing in foreign foods, or Africa, the lack of modern roads and functioning railways, because I think there is, in the Horn of Africa, whether it's strictly in Ethiopia, there's also a civil war going on up here in Ethiopia right now, if you don't know about it, that tens, if not hundreds of thousands of people are involved fighting right now. As I'm speaking right now, there's a major civil war going on in Ethiopia. Unless peace broke out a few moments ago or a day or two ago or something. I hadn't heard about it yet. But there's, food shortage problems. Yeah, famine. But it's not, and people here can't grow food well because of bad conditions. Could be, I'm sure, are exacerbated to some degree by the Civil War. But so there's, a local food shortage, but there's no global or planetary food shortage. The U.S. has, including like my uncle, who has some farmland, who's being paid by the government to not farm it. Because if he were to farm it, and he's not a farmer, he inherited the land. He has more extended relatives from me that I've never even heard of, but local to him, through that branch of the family and whatnot. Who are farmers, and so he could have somebody put his land in productivity, but the government pays him not to have it productivity because that would put too much food onto the U.S. market. So we have lots of land being left fallow meaning farmland not being farmed, or land that could be made easily into farmland, that is just not being done, being productively used. So a lot of farmers looked around, well, hey, I could buy that land next to mine, put it into production and sell it, or I could buy some farm machinery to, more effectively farm. And so I don't have to hire more people or whatever to get more. Because he may have a farmer very well, whether out in the Midwest or on the East Coast, very well may have more land than he can farm himself or his family. And yeah, they hire more people during harvest or whatever, but just even the regular farming activity is just more than he can handle on his own. And we're talking, around, 1914, 1915 particularly. And giving some more modern machinery, he could put more of it into production. So with this boom in sales of food to Europe because of World War I, they take out bank loans. And the banks are happy to give out this money because it looks like a really good thing. And so they get that going. Well, there comes a problem. The war ends. Problem number one. Problem number two, the influenza pandemic hits, which disrupts both shipping, as you probably realize that we're having now here, as well as, unlike now, massive population loss in comparison to now. Not so, there is we have had a lot of loss from our pandemics, though it's not as a percentage of as a percentage of most populations. It is not at tragic levels. It's tragic whenever somebody's dying of it. I'm not going to try to minimize that, but it's not like half the town just died. And that was the case in some of these things. It wasn't quite the old, Black Death levels of depopulation, but you did have villages and whatnot that, not just half the town gets sick, half the town dies, the other half is sick, that survives kind of thing. And so you don't have the demand for the food, the prices fall. So all of these farmers who took out what would be sensible loans under the current, wartime market standards, collapse. And that there is a brief depression, but that in America quickly goes away, and we have the roaring 20s, and we don't get into the real Great Depression until the 1930s, which is vaguely related but not directly related, in my opinion. So and I'll look at the chat here in a moment. So that's profiteering, but they weren't sitting on a huge pile of food and going, well, we'll only sell it to you if you pay us an exorbitant amount of money. It's more like, oh, hey, you're paying, instead of 10 cents a potato or 10 potatoes for, a penny potato or whatever, probably back then, or even less, probably 10 potatoes for a penny or something. But I don't know exactly the price of a potato in 1910 or something, sometime period. You're paying, you're willing to pay 2 cents per potato, double the price. Oh, okay. Well, I'll grow twice as much potatoes and sell them to you at that price. And so, is that profiteering? You're getting an edge case there. And you find that in the American Civil War as well. I think degenerating colloquialism lumps both together, probably because it's used as an attack word. Absolutely, half of the town dies, the other men died. And absolutely, Federico. That's hi Beam Slam. So that's very much the situation going on. So I reject. I'm sure it happened that people exploited, cheated, scammed governments out of large sums of money because of the World War I and World War II, because there are those type of people out there in the world. Okay, it happens. And I'm sure that there are a fairly large number of people that got rich because of World War I. But I really take this this idea that industrialists want war as being a false situation. I know that, certain, and generally right now on the conservative side, the big industrial companies are trying to gin up war in Ukraine so they can make money, they can profit off of it, blah, 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 blah. Well, let me tell you something. War is ruinous to economies, okay? War is ruinous. And so even if you're saying, these are American companies or Western European companies, and the war is going to be fought in the Ukraine or in Afghanistan or in Iraq or, some part of the third world. War is ruinous. The book leans a lot on the vast contributions of the major German corps to Hitler. But yes. Okay, well, let me get to my hypothesis here. War is ruinous to industry. Industries do not want war. What they do like is the threat of war. And an arms race, a good old arms race, is great for them. They want to go, hey, look, these Russians, we'll try to keep it in the modern term and what's going on topically in the news now. Hey, these Russians have all of these tanks sitting on your border, Ukraine. Hey, these Russians have all these aircraft on your border. Why Ukraine? Or, hey, English government, because they did ship a bunch of missiles. Hey, English government, why don't you give Ukraine a lot of missiles to out of your supply stock of missiles to Ukraine, so that if there's a war there, they'll be able to defend themselves? And Britain goes, yeah, that sounds like a good plan. We'll send a few trainers. This is what happens. This is a known fact. Britain flies in a few weeks ago now, a bunch, multiple flights in a day, a bunch of shoulder fire type missiles, maybe a little bigger than shoulder fire, but a bunch of portable missiles, mostly anti-tank missiles, I believe. And we send in a handful of trainers. Literally, I think, less than 20 or something, just some small number of trainers to train the trainers, the guys who are actually going to go and train all the Ukrainians on how to use these missiles, because they're more complicated than a RPG-7, but, they're not super complicated. So we'll train the trainers, because these guys only presumably speak English. So you get just some people that are bilingual here. And so you train up these things. That, and then of course, once they've given off all these missiles, well, the United Kingdom's going to need to replace them with these new shiny other missiles. Okay, the threat of war, the idea, and now of course another defense or war-related company will go, hey, Russians, they've got all these missiles. Here, I have this system that you can stick on your tank that will disrupt incoming missiles. And it's only going to be $1 million per tank, but hey, your tanks are like $20 million a piece. So hey, investing another $1 million to protect your $20 million tank per tank, that's cheap. Don't you want to buy our new anti-missile system to put on your tanks? And Russia will go, this is pretty good. Yeah, we like this. Yeah, okay, we'll spend this. And then, we could sell you the old missiles, Britain, the same models as you just gave to Ukraine. But those Russian dudes, they now have this anti-missile system on their tank. We have a missile that will defeat that. Yeah. Whether it would or not, they in tests it shows it will, but may not on the actual battlefield. It's only twice as much, but it'll actually, why do you want missiles that don't work? We'll get you missiles that actually knock out the tank. Okay. See, this is what they want to have happen: is arms races. Is an anti-system, then a system that defeats it, that back and forth over time. That's good. But see, what happens is if there's a war that breaks out, you spend huge amounts of money and you disrupt the system. And then let's say peace, instead of the war break, because let's say if Russia comes in, takes half of Ukraine, I'm gonna posit that if they come in, they only take half of Ukraine. So Ukraine still exists. But Ukraine, the capital, Kiev, gets bombed and shattered and invaded. Some of these other cities, people are dead. Whatever factories that are around that were sort of productive are blown up, because they do have some armaments factories in Ukraine that sell to other parts of the world. All those are destroyed, and they're second-rate arms, but they're still, decent-rate arms for, Africa or some other place, but not dealing with modern Russian. I keep wanting to say Soviet, but modern Russian stuff. Okay, so Ukraine has been devastated, and it's only half as big as it used to be. And Russia's had lots of their tanks shot up, and lots of their aircraft shot down. And so they're going like, shit, we just lost half the aircraft because those missiles that Britain or America or whoever sent in were actually pretty effective at shooting down aircraft. Well, they're not going to have lots of extra money to buy new shiny toys. They're just resetting up some of the old stuff, paying off all of the stuff. So war is not profitable. It's the threat of war. And so, if there is no war, Russia backs down. Now, in a few years, they can go that the guy who sells the anti-missile system for the tanks, somebody else going, hey, those Russians might invade again sometime in the future. We got this missile here. They're expensive, but your national security is probably worth the expense. You can afford these. So you see, they don't want war. They want that threat of war. And so the anti-Jew. Hey, Arno, can you go to YouTube and ban the anti-Jew? I don't like that name. I'm not going to tolerate that name. I'm not going to tolerate the anti of any name in any chat. That's any sort of ethnic group. I don't care if it's the anti-German. We're not tolerating those around here. So if you can dig into YouTube and ban that, I know you might take a minute or two to do it, but if you can, Arno, thanks. So yeah. I don't care your personal viewpoints. You can have whatever personal viewpoints you want to have. You can hate whoever you want to hate out on the planet. Just don't bring names or those comments into my chat. I'm a Jew lover, so I love Jews. I think Jews are great people. I'm not Jewish, but I think Jews are great. Don't in any way think that I dislike Jews on any level whatsoever. I am pro-Jewish, I am pro-Israel, I'm pro-Zionist. I think Jews are great. Okay, let's see. Well, the war between Ukraine and Russia will break out soon. Look at all the events. Yeah, Arno, I don't know if it's going to break out. There's new talks I heard, I think, within the last 24 hours. I think they're overreacting. There's something going on. Putin is pushing. He's mobilizing lots of forces, spending lots of money, doing what he's doing. There's got to be a plan. I think from one of the Jack Ryan novels, the Russians don't go to the toilet without, I'm paraphrasing here, without a plan. So they have a plan. They have a goal. They have a thing. Okay, he's playing poker with the West, same as he's trying to destabilize. Yeah, he's trying to destabilize Ukraine. He's trying to do things. Thank you, Arno. Yeah, thank you. I'm just reading down through the chat. I get to you. Oh, I agree. Broken window fallacy, but the glacier gets rich. Yeah, but it's a fallacy, and it doesn't. Yes, a storm comes in, breaks a bunch of windows and other things, and there is economic activity to repair it, but it is a fallacy in that it's a good idea. I've gone into a lot of talks. I'm not going into because I don't know what's going to happen in none of the talks. So that I'm just sure Putin has. He knows what he wants out of his actions, and he has an idea of what he is willing to do. I think he wants to. I think I said this earlier. I think he wants to threaten war, threaten invasion, to get the West. I'm looking everything at Czechoslovakia. I think this is a repeat of Czechoslovakia / Poland. I think he is, because he's grabbed up Ukraine. Because I don't know. I mean, at Crimea. I don't know that anybody's officially recognized this as Russian territory now. The Ukrainians haven't. I don't believe the U.S. has. I don't believe the British has. I don't believe any EU country has recognized. Yeah, maybe Turkmenistan has or something. But I don't think anybody's officially recognized this is Russian territory. I don't think whatever territory gains he's made, my cop is right about here, in the Donbass region, I think he wants to get I think he wants territorial concessions here. Maybe more along the coast or south of whatever river this is. I think he wants. I don't think he wants to invade, but I think he wants to get the West to put pressure on Ukraine to this sort of region here, give it up, and having everybody sort of recognizing these territories as being Russian. I think that's what he wants. I think he's willing to invade if he doesn't think the cost to the West, his cost in the West would be too. If he doesn't get what he wants. If he doesn't get what he wants, I think he would be willing to invade if he thought the reaction in the West wasn't going to be too severe, and just take it by force. Yeah, you can't create a surplus by blowing things up. So that profiteering thing triggered me. I mean, not in a bad way. I'm not upset at you or whatever, but it just gives me a talking point here. War profiteering, is most of the margins on materiel in war are not very big. Yeah, they're making a profit on every bullet, maybe, likely, but it is super small. And I will contend this: you're going to have a really hard time trying to change my mind. At least of major nations. I mean, you can find some small edge cases, but only one nation won in World War II, and that was the United States. The United States was immensely better off after World War II than any of the other nations participating in. I'm not saying who was on the winning side or who contributed the most. Yes, the Soviets contributed a lot to defeating the Soviet Union, and they were on the winning side, but the Soviet Union was exhausted. The Soviet Union didn't win as in, hey, yeah, we're doing great now that we were invaded by the Soviet Union, invaded by the Nazis and had all these people killed. No, they didn't win in the game of war. It's only the U.S., and that's how I want to make it. It's not who was on the winning side or who contributed the most. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about who was a winner out of the war, and it is only the U.S. And it still paid a price, heavy price, but it is a winner. I mean, you can talk about edge cases of Canada as a sort of a separate entity, or Mexico or something like that, that really didn't contribute much to the war, that, was sort of there. So, so I just look at that. Okay, I would have invaded already. Yeah, okay. Neutral. I had a professor that wrote a bunch of books on World War. Didn't read them. Yeah. So yeah, I see it as an attack. And I bet you that professor that wrote those was a communist. I bet you so. Don't. I mean, I have evidence that he's a communist. One, he was a professor. Most professors of history and whatnot are communists. So yeah, so I have some evidence, but I don't have conclusive evidence. But I bet she's a communist and using that as a line of attack. She's French. Okay, more evidence that she's a communist. Are there any? Because yes, that may include economics with somebody writing a book like that, professor, but I have met one economics professor here in the United States that wasn't a communist. He was actually sort of a capitalist. Studied to Sorbonne. Yeah, okay, you're just giving more evidence that she's a communist. So yes, communist. I mean, tell me that she, well, voting for Le Pen, she's probably a fascist or something, but yeah, tell me, say that she wrote an article in praise of Donald Trump or something, yeah, then I'll start to believe maybe she's not a communist, but probably is. I had one history professor. I actually had one history professor who went to Oxford. He was an American, but as I think a young adult, meaning out of the normal college years, but he later went to go study in Oxford, after already getting a whatever degrees here in the U.S., but went to go get his doctorate or something in Oxford. He was a traditionalist and elitist, and very much liked and openly liked engaging with the leftist students around him, and he was openly a I don't know if a reactionary is the right term, but a sort of core conservative type person, but classical, sort of like yay for the king. Now in England or whatever, not, he wasn't trying to bring a monarchy or something to America, but liked America for America, being America good as when it it is, but was like yay, happy for the English royal family, or royal, the royalist versus the parliamentarian. He was on the royalist side, so yeah, a rather conservative sort of person. So yeah, I've known one, but he was outstanding in his difference, and he walked around mostly wearing his Oxford school tie and sort of traditional professor garb, a jacket and whatnot. But yeah, that's one of the few notable non-communist history professors I was around. Russia's going to take strategic regions, or Ukraine likely will push them. Yeah, we'll see what they do. Yeah, France are going, well, perfect. Took decades to recover, never really did. Yeah, absolutely, Ari. Absolutely. Let me try to got it. I almost forgot. Yeah, okay, even more evidence that she's a communist. 2 libraries in 2 countries. I live in, 2 counties, sorry. Border town did not have Common Sense by Thomas Paine. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I have a copy of it on one of my bookshelves here. Pretty sure. Though, of course, I'm a monarchist when it comes to traditional English setting, so Common Sense is, has its own sort of period leftist viewpoints. Yes. Now, every professor I had knew I was in the history/political science departments. I was taking marine biology. I don't think the professor knew I had a political bent at all, because it didn't matter, because we were in a marine biology course, so nothing, politics, whatever came up, wasn't on the horizon. But whenever I was in, as you can imagine, something that is sort of political oriented, they all knew I was a right winger, if you will. There was no help but to know. Okay, well, 5 years. Yeah, because let's take a quick look. I know we're doing more oil contracts right now. Enigma, continue. Ooh, I'll do a GKF. No, because those are post a meal. Mutually exclusive. I don't. Well, prioritizing. Yes. Okay. So yeah. So this isn't going to help with the Emil fighter. Emil or the E version, which is more technical. Okay. So let's get researching the Emil. These were these down here. Prioritize. So let's get that going so we can put into production. Yeah, about radical democracy. Oh, absolutely. County libraries or city or major city libraries. If you're in a major city, which are more important, I would say, than a county library. But if you're rural, a county library, everyone should have a copy of, like Poor Richard's Almanac. Ben Franklin, at least some example of that, which no, I haven't read, but and other similar books that, in common sense, that the founding fathers of America should be there and available to check out and read, even if it sits there for years unread. That is not the point, whether it's read or not. I guess for now. It only got stronger. Well, it's the American economy got stronger, but it's also technology in America shoots up. America's employment goes up. Yes, there's obviously tragic death in America, but it's limited. There's virtually no attacks on American home soil. Notice I said virtually. There's some minor, but even the attack on Pearl Harbor does minor damage to the civil infrastructure outside of Ford Island. I don't know if it's at all seeable on this map. Yeah, not really. Well, the Pearl Harbor, Honolulu's up here. Pearl Harbor, the military base, is mostly an island in the middle of the harbor. And that's where the Japanese attacks were concentrated. There are some bases around the periphery a little bit that were hit, and of course they strafed civilian vehicles, they strafed civilian buildings and whatnot, and killed civilians well outside. Meaning the pilots doing it knew that they were hitting civilian targets, absolutely. But the amount of death and destruction outside of the military facilities was extremely minor. So it just is. And we've got 200, which I think is maybe not the max. Oh, okay, 5,000. Okay, so we don't need to try to spend that right now. We are full of fuel. And there are a lot of people out there that would like to, let's see, can I convert any one of these templates yet? Not yet, because we need more troops for Special Forces cap. Okay, I understand weird game mechanics, but I really don't put mounted troops as Special Forces, but that's just me. I put paratroopers. I mean, I would say I would say that the mountain troopers are no more special forces than the Panzertruppen at this time are. How are we doing for motorization? Just generally trucks. We could produce more trucks. Okay. Still haven't got to Dora. We need to get to Dora into production. I think we're still trying to produce some heavy, get full amount of heavy artillery. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Oh, well, yes. Let's make sure we don't create a new, but we will convert these to better Ju-87s. We're skipping the intermediate. Thanks, Arno. More oil contracts, very good. Paratroopers, very nice. I guess going into more about its economy can grow great during wartime as long as it's not directly involved in it. Whether they're neutral or off mainland, impossible. Yeah, there's part of that. There's also global strategic position as well. You know, we ended up with a super navy and could afford to maintain a super navy where Britain was exhausted and its colonialism was quickly fading, and its big navy with it, and things, and it just exhausted everybody else. Even you can look at Vietnam. France couldn't afford Vietnam, after World War II and being occupied and all, but they tried, and of course they could have held on to it. They were determined enough. They could have held on to it, except there were outside forces, particularly the Soviet Union, but also communist China, that were supplying the insurgents. If the insurgents had to get weapons and pay for them with real money, somehow had to generate the money themselves and not have somebody give them the money, they would have made a tough time for occupying, I think, or capture weapons locally or whatever. They would have made it a tough time, but France could have held on to it. Into at least Vietnam. Laos and Cambodia, particularly Laos, is hardly worth it. There's just not much there. But France could have held on to it. It's the outside forces pushing into it. They just couldn't afford. And the only way they were able to do what they did, including like the Dien Bien Phu, was with American aid and support. Mostly in material aid and support. Think some air flights, but I don't really think any ground troops. The U.S. holding on to it, I will forever say the U.S. lost the Vietnam War here. The hearts and minds of the American people, not of South Vietnam. There were definite moments that, especially the Tet Offensive, was a great victory for the American forces. It destroys the VC, the Viet Cong. The Viet Cong become a shadow of itself and barely functions for the rest of the war. The war is taken up by the NVA, the North Vietnamese Army, fighting in South Vietnam, not the Viet Cong anymore. But the perception of loss there, but in the U.S. is what causes its defeat. Sure, there are armaments companies making money, but it's, they were going to make money anyways in the Cold War. You don't, replacing shot down fighters, they're shot down over North Vietnam or something, really isn't that, because somebody arguing, well, they would shoot down more and you got to buy a few. Yeah, you're going to buy a few more, but really you'd ultimately have enough profit and stable profit, because what happens is after a Vietnam War, sales go down on weapon systems because budgets have to retract. So sure, one company who makes a particular thing might do well out of it, but the armaments industry as a whole really contracts in the 70s. After the Vietnam War is over, and a lot, look people, bullets are cheap. Bullet manufacturers sure make money and governments spend money there, but you know what really makes money are things like aircraft carriers, nuclear submarines. Whether they have nuclear missiles on them or not, that doesn't matter. But nuke submarines cost massive amounts of money. Big B-52 bombers cost lots of money, and there's very few of them are shot down in Vietnam, I believe. I could be wrong about that, but I think very few of them are shot down in Vietnam. And so you need to make aircraft carriers, submarines, and B-52 bombers for a Cold War, whether you're fighting in Vietnam itself. So certain manufacturers, guys who are making bullets, might see higher sales, but overall the armaments industry is looking at that time in the late 60s, early 70s at the general Cold War, and are making so much more money there. So yeah, it's not as important to armaments companies to making money as the people that want to attack want to make it out, because they want to use it as a means to destabilize nations. That is their method. Okay, I think this is now the plan here. Before we push on the Sudeten, as a mod designer, as a game designer, which I am in a modding way, I would make a requirement for the Manned Sudetenland to have the West Wall, because Germany isn't going to even consider doing something that would cause a war with the Western Allies without a West Wall in place. That is my read upon it, and I think anybody who's moderately rational would have a similar sort of read on the situation. How long is this going to take? $200. We wait just a little while more efficiently. Yeah, I know not doing all these Navy stuff. We could do some submarines. What's the date here? Okay, 38. Yeah, we could do submarines. Uber submarines. Oh, another bot over on YouTube there, Arno. Okay, and this episode has gone on long enough with my prattling on about things. I hope it was entertaining. Thank you so much. Thanks for liking the videos. See you next time for even more, yes, more Hearts of